Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Sally Alsop, the ICG member responsible for our webinar programme. So, continuing with our series of webinars on international research, our focus this time is on Africa. And we're delighted to welcome our panel of ICG members, Emile Brun, Sharon Matike, and Andrew Oniyebako. Emile founded African Grey in 2016, having long been frustrated by agencies who charged exorbitant prices, delivered poor quality research, and had a lack of empathy for African consumers. The aim was that African Grey would help teams get closer to their target consumers in Africa and hence make better decisions. Sharon, who we're hoping will join us in a few minutes, runs her company Afrique Monitor from Cameroon. With footprints in over 35 unique African markets, she provides services such as market entry research, data collection, qualitative and quantitative product research, corporate investigations, and Africa business consulting. Andrew founded Mojo Africa, a strategic African cultural insights consultancy in 2015. Using a plethora of innovative and proprietary investigative means, he helps clients better understand African markets so they can successfully create better products, services, and marketing strategies attuned to those markets. Our panelists today will be each sharing some cultural insights, advice, and anecdotes from their wealth of experience conducting research on the African continent, and we'll then open the topic up for discussion and questions. Before we go any further, Andrew would like to ask you this simple question, What simple research question would you like to ask consumers in Africa? So if you could all take a minute just to think about that and put your answers in the chat box for us, and then we'll come back to this later on. Do you want to add anything, Andrew? Are you happy with that?
No, that's great, Sally. Just as soon as you can, pop a question in there. Think about product, category, whatever, and I'll help. Thank you.
Okay, so this webinar is generously sponsored by Babbel. They are winners of the MRS Operations Award for the Best Viewing Facility, Experience and Impact. Before we begin our webinar, here are some more events that we've got planned for you over the coming weeks. Don't forget that we're able to offer great value sponsorship opportunities with each of our webinars and online events, and just contact Lucy if you've got any questions or would like to know more. I'd just like to point out that the third of our international research webinars is on the Thursday, the 14th of March, and that's about conducting research in Europe, and that will be a panel debate. So now I'm going to hand over to our speakers, and then firstly, Emile, who'll be kicking it off for us.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Let me just skip my screen sharing. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Thanks, Andrew, for the confirmation. Okay, so we chose Nowhere Be Like Africa for the title for this webinar. It's from the song Africa. It's by Yemi Alade and from Nigeria, and Kenya's Sauti Sol. So we thought it was a nice song, and it's a lovely lyric that repeats throughout the song. We thought it was appropriate for our particular presentation. So what qualifies me to speak about Africa? Well, I was born, raised, and educated there. I read African politics at university. I've importantly, I've lived, I've traveled, I've holidayed across the continent. But more importantly than all of that is that I've got decades of experience of doing research across Africa, and I wanted to share that today. And the map here represents the markets in Africa where my clients send me to on a regular basis. Those are the ones, just to show that's my footprint, my business footprint with African Grey. But I'd want to just point out to you that there are these little dots in the Indian Ocean. So if anyone ever needs help with these hardship markets, these hard to get to markets, I'd be very keen on supporting you. I could spend a whole day speaking about Africa, giving you anecdotes and everything else, but I thought to curb my enthusiasm, I'm going to use a Pecha Kucha presentation, go Japanese style. I'm going to make sure that it's going to force me to be concise. I'm not going to inflict lots of charts, no paragraphs or boring text. I'm just going to give you images and a compelling story, and hopefully I can do all of what I need to talk about in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. So bear with me, this might sound rushed, but here we go. There are colossal shortcomings in the understanding of Africa and its people, and many foreigners fail to understand this very diverse continent. Did you know that there's about between 1,000 and 2,000 languages spoken in Africa? And by 2050, Nigeria is expected to overtake the USA as the world's third most populous market. Here are 2 book recommendations for you to help you with a deeper understanding. Africa already has the world's youngest consumer market, and it's expected that 25% of the world's population will live on this continent. And that's going to impact everything from geopolitics to trade to religion, migration patterns. So Africa is cool. What are the implications for us in our industry? Well, brands that aren't immersed in Africa will be left behind, and those making decisions with poor research are going to fare worse. It's one thing to design a post, it's another thing to know how it's going to be seen in public. Africa is challenging and complex. Getting it wrong damages both brands and careers. What sort of mistakes do brand teams make? Maybe they enter a market with no research whatsoever, or they think that a European activation is going to work in Africa, or they don't understand price points in Africa, making the product unaffordable, or they hope that a Nigerian campaign could work in Ethiopia. Simple mistakes for client-side people to make. What sort of mistakes could African researchers make? Some get the basics wrong, from recruitment to poor moderation. Lack of capability will impact everything from programming to fieldwork and analysis. With strategically significant projects, some are unable to offer meaningful insights. But you need to understand the context. Life is very tough for local research agencies in Africa. They compete for a small pool of demanding local clients who aggressively drive prices down. With low margins, the relationship with the clients is much like a master and slave, which means they're not able to challenge or offer you an independent voice because they're just not used to it. So when you come along with your international research inquiry, local agencies will bring out a hugely inflated foreigner's rate card, and they'll say just about anything to get the business, including claiming expertise that they don't possess. But don't take this personally. They are simply trying to keep their heads above water. But the problem isn't confined to Africa. Here in the UK, there's a tech company dressed up as a research agency who had a Nigerian consumer panel and a Nigerian community manager all recruited on Facebook. But the flaw was no one had ever been to Nigeria, didn't understand how things worked, and the incentives were out of whack. Their ways of working were dubious, and their skin-deep output only impressed idiots who didn't know better. So when you think about social media recruitment, 2 words for you. We have actually tested this. We recruited a group of off Facebook and met them in Lagos for dinner. We concluded that 30% of the sample were who they had claimed to be online, and the best example was the microfinancing manager turned out to be a car park attendant. In Africa, what can go wrong might well go wrong. And over the years, I've had projects that have failed because of power outages, political rallies, governments shutting off the internet to stifle protests, storms and floods, and even an exploding electricity substation. If you've chosen the wrong partner, things will soon go wrong. Know that you'll have to act fast. And when you've got no time, know that you're going to have to throw money at the problem, having already spent half your budget. And if you can't fix their failings, your professional reputation will take a hit and your brands will suffer. But it is possible to do really good work in Africa. So despite rural roads, in Kenya, the norm was to have secondhand imported cars, not suited for Africa. Our client built a Kenyan SUV, very rudimentary, note the plastic windows. We helped them map the desires, the trade-offs, and the price sensitivities to build an updated version. Another client wanted to enter the solar market in the DRC, and our local team, we worked with them to generate a database of existing products. Our team mapped the category, identified the opportunities, and we shaped their propositions, their price points, and their channel strategy to successfully enter the market. Another client wanted us to drive innovation and brand repositioning, and we did a full spectrum of research for them, and I couldn't have done it without great researchers on the ground, in-home ethnographic immersions, co-creation workshops. We did quant testing to test price points, and we've launched multiple innovation projects, and that's really done well. We've decreased real-world violence through better online behaviors, because social media can spread misinformation, and that can result in real-world bloodshed. And our US client wanted us to test ways to negate those bad online behaviors, which we managed to do, with social media monitoring and in-depth interviews and focus groups. A lot of clients want us to get them closer to consumers in new markets, which might be in-home immersions, getting them to eat local, go to top-end bars. We might just create videos for them, which can be shared internally, or we can accompany mums in a shop, or even go on trade visits. So how do you go about finding the right African partner? Ask someone with actual solid African experience for a referral. Check out the person's website. Do they have a company email address? Have a chat. Look at LinkedIn. Does their profile give you confidence? And finally, talk to someone that has recently worked with them. In terms of the top tips for making sure it goes right, be thorough. Offer solid briefings, robust recruitment questionnaires. Run pilots to boost confidence. Use a local moderator, someone who grasps cultural nuances. Check everything again. Build in contingencies and use time as your friend. Don't go too fast. And getting it right is about building relationships. You need to think long-term. Use mistakes as a good learning opportunity. Spend time on the ground with your local partners. It builds understanding and credibility. And be generous. Reward great work with a healthy margin. And take the time to build capability if necessary. It'll pay back handsomely. And most importantly, always enjoy where you are in Africa. Appreciate your surroundings and have fun whilst you're working there, be it in Yamoussoukro, Kanu, Addis, Cairo, Maputo, Kampala. There's lots to be had, lots of people to meet, lots of good local cuisine to eat. So that's it from me. I'm now going to say, well, we did do it in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And I'll speak to you later when we do Q&A.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emile. So we're now going to hand over to to Sharon, because she has arrived. So Sharon, are you able to share your slides and take over from Emile? Can you unmute yourself, Sharon? You're still muted.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, fantastic. Can you put it on full screen mode, Sharon? Is that possible?
Okay, full screen mode. Yes.
You go into slideshow. Yeah, great.
All
Fantastic.
right.
Good.
Yeah.
Over to you. Over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Continuing from where Emile left off, I'm Sharon Matik. I run a research business in Africa. I'm based in Cameroon, and I'm actually Ghanaian. I've lived significantly in these two African countries for a long time, and I have been a researcher for over 7 years in sub-Saharan African markets. So I'll just be taking you through some interesting updates on the continent, and then also how it benefits us as researchers. So again, from all that Emile said, you notice that a lot is happening in Africa. Actually, there are a lot of opportunities now in Africa. I know that sometimes when we say Africa, people think that it's a continent. It's a country. People feel that Africa is just one country. That is why you would be on a plane with someone and then you go like, okay, I'm going back home to Cameroon, and they go like, oh, I went to school with someone in Congo. Can you greet them for me? So it's not like that. Africa is made up of 54 unique countries. Each country has a different way of operating. And then the second thing is that doing business in Africa is not scary. because Africa has beautiful cities, and you can pretty much do anything research-wise in Africa, whether they are focus groups, whether you need to do internet research, whether you need to do desk research, whether you need to organize a panel, whatever it is, you can do it in Africa. The third thing is that often payments for goods and services in the continent are done by cash. Sometimes you might have the ability to use your credit cards, but in Africa, most of our payments, so when you're recruiting, when you're providing incentives and all that, it's best to do cash. And then often most of the places or services, you have to prepay before getting anything done in Africa. The thing is, another thing with Africa is that there are different administrative blocks. So that tells you that how Eastern Africa operates is different from how Central Africa, for example, operates. It's different from how Western Africa operates. It's different from how the Northern Africans and the Southern Africans operate. And then Africa is divided into different economic clusters. So if you're doing research, for example, in a French market, it might be different from doing research in a place like Nigeria, Lagos, or in Ghana, because of the different nuances, payment terms, the cultural mindsets, type of workers and how they work and all that. So the fourth point is that getting information as a researcher in Africa can be very difficult. One, because current data is hard to come by. We do not have a very structured way of collating information. So whereas if you do research in the UK or any Western market, you might easily find your company reports online. You might easily find some good significant information online to even buy. Africa has very limited data, and most of the data you might find, especially if you're doing desk research, might be outdated. So often the best approach, depending on the kind of research you are doing, I specialize in market entry research and then often product research or brand positioning research. What you might need to do is to get real-time on-the-ground data. Okay, so to counter the outdated information you might probably find, or information that is not accurate, might have been accurate 10 years ago, but not accurate now, you need to be able to get the real data currently. This is why it's very important to use on the ground experts and helpers and aides when covering research, because sometimes you might get information saying one thing, but actually on the ground, it's a very different thing altogether. And so the difficulty in getting real data or current data or true data relevant to your current research is why you need on the ground presence. Then key takeaway for researchers, as Emil mentioned earlier, he said you should enjoy the continent. There's lots of nice things in Africa for you. I mean, if you set off to do work, you first of all should know that it's a beautiful continent, beautiful people. I mean, there's a lot of difference in each region of Africa you ever work in. If you go to the Northern African region, you will see different things. If you come to West Africa, it's a whole ball game. If you go to the Central Africa, it's different. So just enjoy the continent, enjoy the food, all that. And then Africa is ready and a rising horizon for global business expansion and needs. So as I explained earlier, I am more of a market entry researcher. I help businesses enter. I do research to help them expand, things like that. So it's not, a lot is happening in Africa generally, you know, and it is time for researchers to position themselves properly so that they can also get work or pitch interest to potential clients on considering the markets. Now, it is possible to carry out all kinds of research in the different parts of the continent. What you need to understand, though, is the nuances. So who will be your partners? How do they work? Are they really credible? Are they, have they worked with anybody before? What is their reputation? Things like that you might want to consider, but it is possible to carry any kind of research. That being said, some depending on the type of research, you might need to use a different approach depending on the type of research. For example, if you're carrying out a research that has to do with a lot of digital instruments, for example, in a rural community in Africa, you might need an aid to help, because maybe in that rural area, mobile phone penetration is very low. So often if you tell a client that, yes, you want to assess the usage of a fintech payment platform, but you want to assess that usage not in Accra or Douala, but you want to assess it in a place called Bambili in Cameroon, that might be difficult to do, because majority of the people in Bambili probably do not have access to the apps you need on your phone to be able to even track the research. So you might need aids to help them do that. You will need somebody to guide them through the process. So that's it. Because of limited availability of secondary and real-time data, any African researcher needs to tailor research in a way to get what you want. So again, you take into consideration the nuances. Then you understand the need for versatility as a researcher. So for example, if you work with researchers in French markets, they might be more interested in getting work done at the end of the task, you know. Let me go back. Yeah, and if you want to do research with, if you want to do research with English-speaking Africans in Nigeria, there are different ways they also operate. So you need to be able to learn how to work with them. Now, the issue of cash being the default mode for payments and then prepayment of services is something to consider whenever you are working with African researchers or whenever you're working with local partners, because often they have to pay for stuff before they are able to get the work done. Thank you. That's the short presentation. And my business is Africa Monitor, and we connect the world with Africa. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sharon. That was really interesting. So now our last but not least speaker is Andrew. If you want to, Sharon, can you stop sharing, and then we'll hand over to Andrew.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen? Yeah, great.
Yes,
thanks,
okay.
Emil. Okay, brilliant. So let me get started. Let me just move a few things off my screen so I can see what I'm presenting. All right, great. So I'm Andrew Onyebako. I run a company called Emergent Africa. We're a strategic cultural intelligence agency. We're based in Africa across Lagos and Nairobi, but we work in lots of different markets, multidisciplinary team of African aficionados. We're on the ground and we focus on Africa 24/7. And we were founded in 2014. So today I want to sort of build, I don't want to repeat what Emil and Sharon have said. They've just fantastic presentations. You know, there's a lot of overlap between what we all do. But, you know, I just want to open your eyes to some of the things that are possible on the continent. I think a lot of people sort of look at Africa with a little bit of fear, feel there's a lot of constraint, not sure what is actually doable on the continent. So I want to highlight, you know, that if you use a little bit of imagination, you can do a lot of work over there, you know, even up to, you know, online groups, even up as far as semiotics. To a really high standard as well. So before we get started, I'd like to do a little, I'd like to keep it a bit interactive. I want to do a little poll. So Sally, I think, is going to share a poll here. And what I want you to do is get involved as quickly as possible. And I want you to, the idea is to highlight that, you know, a lot of agencies on the continent go to a lot of extent to try and make your project work. So one of these is a lie. I want you to select which one you think is a lie. And then in a moment, we'll stop the poll and then see what everyone thinks. So, you know, some agencies have convinced mothers to let them measure their babies as a pre-recruitment criteria. We've engaged witch doctors on the continent to help stop Nigerian children from stunting. We've been stopped and searched at airports with bags full of sex toys and tools. We've partied 7 hours long, non-stop, to uncover demand space insights. So if you cast your vote now, I'll count down to 10, or from 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll end the poll and see what people have said. So can we end the poll, please? And can we show the answers? Oh, right, okay. So most of you feel that we've not been stopped and searched in an airport, transporting bags full of sex toys, and that we've not engaged witch doctors to help stun Nigerian children. Right, so the answer actually is they're all true. So we've seen agencies and also have ourselves been involved in doing those kind of things just to make sure that projects that agencies, clients have managed to reach their full potential. So there's a lot of skill and a lot of dedication from agencies or companies that work on the continent. So yeah, Africa has its problems. That's partially true. You know, infrastructural challenges, electricity, roads sometimes are a bit challenging, especially if you go out into the rural areas and also in some capitals. There's lots of cultural barriers or cultural differences, let's call them. And also language can be a challenge in various places across the continent. But we, and I'm sure Emil and Sharon like to sort of reposition that as, you know, these problems as fascinating opportunities to find, you know, great, beautiful solutions to enable projects to succeed. What I'd like to do is share a sample of some of the sort of solutions that you may not have seen or heard of or thought about before, which, you know, when it comes to research in Africa, and which, you know, I've seen used or personally have used when trying to solve challenges for clients. So let's start off with recruitment, because I feel that this is an area where agencies worry about, you know, Emil pointed out, you know, that it can go awfully wrong. And I've been in situations in Chad where it has gone beautifully wrong before. You know, it's important to get this right. And it's important for this to be done in a timely manner. But what I want to say is that there are some companies out there, you know, Kimoyo Insight's an example, and there are other ones which have offerings which can get you participants in really accelerated timelines and ensure that they are quality and they fit exactly what you're looking for. And, you know, sometimes this can be done in anywhere between 24 to 48 hours. And they've helped us do just that about a month ago for a project that we were working on. So quality and rapid recruitment is definitely something which is possible on the continent. So another problem which you may encounter when you're doing work in Africa is budget. Often Africa is actually a lot more expensive than people anticipate it to be. So, you know, sometimes your client may not be able to afford to travel into the market, but you still want an idea of what people look like, what people do, what categories look like, and what products people are using. So what I'm showing you now is a bit of a reconstruction. We had to reconstruct this because we couldn't show the client's actual project, but it's a reconstruction of a project we did for a client. We created a platform to transport them and 50 others of their team into Nigeria. So this was a space where we had outdoor advertising, a section where they could see outdoor advertising, a section where they could see vox pops from participants on how they clean their face, how they applied skincare products. We could see TVCs. We could see you know, various different things, the products that they had in their home, what modern trade and traditional trade. setups looked like, so they could really get a real sense of what it's like to be on the ground as much as possible without actually being there. And this was a really fantastic thing, and they often go back to that when they're having their sessions, workshop sessions, innovation sessions as well. So there are also great ways to do innovation testing across the continent as well. I'm just going to talk about this one version that we've come across or worked on, which was actually by transforming the research into a game, so gamification, if you will. This is something that originated, at least as far as we're concerned, within during the pandemic, when you could move around and where internet got better and where people were looking for a bit of distraction, a bit more fun online. So ultimately, this is an approach which can be done across lots of different markets simultaneously. It's a really rich, yielding process where you can get video output, audio output, people use emoticons, you can get also quant data at the back of this. And it can be used to test packaging, concept statements, and it can be used to sort of test whether what you're bringing into market can be is differentiated from the incumbents in the market. The key thing here is to couch everything or set everything up as a bit of a competition. That every single question we put out there is a competition. You've got teams, and what that helps you access is the system one responses. So what we've found is that a lot of the work that we've done using this methodology really gets you to see what people really want, what people really think about your product. So this was another fun, exhausting, but really interesting approach that you can use in Africa. And internet, you know, if you recruit in the right kind of way, you can get lots of people who've got great internet who can take part in this kind of work. So clients really want to know what's happening in the moment when their products are being used or potentially used as well. So we, or agencies that I've come across on the ground, can sort of do these demand space immersions or demand space investigations. So sometimes if you travel to the market and you look noticeably different from people, even myself as well, because of the way that you hear me speaking now, sometimes that can alter participants' behavior. I've noticed when participants change the way in which they speak to sort of match the English that I'm using, it can alter how they behave. Sometimes they play up to you. So sometimes teams on the ground are better placed to sort of go into these spaces with participants using the great tech that some of these agencies have to really bring you, almost transport you inside and show you what's going on. And they can stream this as well. And I've seen this done for events or launches, product launches, in bars, in clubs, in restaurants, also watching people do their laundry or doing body washing. We can't promise we can bring you inside of the people's showers when they're showering, but, you know, doing face washing, washing their hands, those kind of things, and even cooking as well. So this is another approach that people have been using. And the last thing that I want to take you through, because I'm just keeping my eye on time, is something which is called Quick Insights. So imagine you're doing workshops which involve Africa, but which are taking place in a different location, so not necessarily in Africa or Nigeria or Cameroon or wherever you may be. So sometimes it's really handy to have consumer input, you know, almost sort of consumers talking to you or putting their point of view across in video format when you're looking in response to different concepts you have, innovation ideas, helping you understand what colors work in a market or not, right? So so rather than exporting the clients to Africa, you can actually import that feedback and even participants into your workshop. So if you're unsure about, you know, what products are popular in a category, or you want to know, you know, what sports brands people love or opinions about that, you can. So there are methods we've seen where you can quickly send out a request to an African network, and then you can get video responses back within the actual innovation workshop. So if you have a question which is kind of a stumbling block in the session, you can blitz out this question, and then you'll get responses from Tanzania, from Ethiopia, from Cameroon, from Sierra Leone, to help you understand what direction you should go in. And it's great because you can get responses from across the continent, and you can even import people into the session. So in a way, you can blitz out to this network, and then within a matter of 20 minutes or so, you can have somebody from Ghana, someone from Morocco, someone from South Africa, and you could speed date different countries with your innovation concepts, so you can get a sense of what's working, what's not working, etc., etc. I will do one more, and this is probably one that you're all familiar with, which is sort of trend spotting. There are a few agencies on the continent who sort of keep a roster of trend spotters in different locations or within their country, who collect trends or who spot, collect semiotics materials, which are noticeable, help you understand what's going on, what's changing in various locations across Africa. And they benefit from training. So they, as Emil was saying, they get increasingly better at what they do, at spotting these tendencies, spotting these shifts on the ground in their market. And it's a really useful resource because, if you can tap into that, then you can hit the ground running. You get a bit of a head start for your project rather than having to start from, ground zero. You already know if you're moving in the right direction. It can already help you answer some hypotheses or questions that you have, and then you can move further, faster as well. So this is, obviously, I've just been highlighting a few of the things which are possible, which you may not have thought were possible, and some interesting things that have happened that I've witnessed and that my team have witnessed on the ground in Africa. So I'll draw the presentation to a close there. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrew. That was really interesting. So now I think we're going to open it up for questions. I think there may have been somebody who already put one into our chat box. Yes, this comes from Gertrude. Is most of the research conducted with young urban audiences, as they may be easier to access remotely versus those in rural areas where face-to-face might be more appropriate?
Yeah. I'll take that on. I'll start anyway.
Yeah.
No, it depends. It depends on who your client, your clients are. Depends what they're looking for, and it depends what the projects are. So we've done a lot of work in, involving like female financial inclusion, all rural, looking at toothpaste usage, all in rural spaces. And even some of the techniques that I've shown you have included rural people who are living in rural spaces. Yes, some of them are tech enabled. Some of them can borrow devices, but and I'm sure Emil and Sharon will say, we love seeing people face to face, and that's where you get a lot of richness, and it's a lot of fun as well. So yeah, that's my stance on that question. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to answer that as well.
Emil or Sharon, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I can add to what Andrew's saying and agree. It entirely depends on the project objectives or the brand's focus. So most FMCG clients will follow the money, so they'll focus on urban areas where the majority of the cash are, where the majority of the people are. And a lot of it will depend on the client's budget. So if they have a tight budget, they'll go for the urban areas because it's going to cost you more to get to rural people. But rural people are accessible, and you can travel around and do things. You can do it both face to face, or you can do it via an app. Although the app, as Sharon mentioned earlier, you need some fieldwork assistance on that. Sharon?
Sharon, do you want to
the gentlemen have answered it exactly. So yeah, you just need to consider young people. Now, what that means is that it depends on the kind of research, because if you're looking at understanding a particular demographic, for example, if you're looking at say women's financial inclusion. So who are you looking at? Are you looking at young people? Are you looking at middle class? Are you looking at old people? So if you're looking at maybe the general population, then those who have access to the digital devices are probably the urban, the young people. So that might not give you a true picture of your the right data. So it's pretty much depends on the project, pretty much depends on the budget of the clients, and pretty much depends on what scope the client is looking at. Then you can tailor a good approach to.
So I understand that mobile phone ownership is really very high in Africa. Is that correct? Yep. And does that vary enormously depending on the country?
It does. Okay. It does vary. It does vary by country.
Yeah.
It does vary by country, and there are lots of websites which can give you very good penetration stats. And I think the thing that is most important is Africa's crossed a threshold where, especially if you look at young audiences, 16 to 45 or 16 to 50, the proliferation of smartphones has gone through the roof in Africa, where 5 years ago it wasn't the case. But so yes, you can, to get the most important part of the population, the economically active, they're all very much online. They're all very much able to be accessed via their phones, and all internet, the vast majority of internet access happens via their mobile phones.
Yeah, okay. Andrew, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I will just say that they're not always turned on. The phones don't always have great cameras. All of those, and the internet is not always great in their area. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying it's not possible. Emil's totally on the money, but you know, just to prepare you for some frustrations that you might have with pre-tasks, because we deal with those all the time. But that's an additional bit.
Yeah. So mobile phone penetration in Africa is increasing, but it's not absolute. I think it's about statistically 43 to 48%, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. In the
depends which country.
Yeah, it depends on which country. Yet some countries like Southern Africa have quite a high rate of penetration. For example, Western African countries too, like Nigeria, Ghana, not bad. Then the issue of the internet. So again, and then another thing is that we are also dealing with a population that might not be so yes, they can navigate their apps and all that, but even with people who have mobile phones, sometimes you have to guide them on how to use it if you are doing a research project with them because of educational background and all kinds of things. So there are a bit some challenges. The internet connectivity being one. Some places very difficult connectivity. Even in the cities, we don't have very top quality internet connectivity. So all these things they weigh on the research, and you have to take it into consideration when you are working in African markets.
Any other questions out there that that you'd like to ask our panel? Carol, I don't know if you want to put your webcam on and ask the question yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Carol.
Thanks. That was really super interesting so far. I just wanted, my questions maybe bizarre, but I just wanted to understand a little bit better how much of the research that you do is for companies from outside Africa trying to get into the market versus African companies themselves.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so my business, I can say the split is 70-30. 70-30 for businesses out of Africa, and then 30% of the businesses we work for are within the African continent. Often they are looking at expanding into other parts. So maybe a company in Nigeria is looking at expanding into Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, or something. But generally, we work with clients that are outside. They are outside of Africa, and then they are looking at entering the market in Africa.
Yeah.
Or they have brands that are very present on the market. Although they themselves are not there, but they have brands with a strong market presence, and then they want to find out something about their brands.
Andrew, were you going to say something then?
Okay.
I would say I kind of roughly match Sharon, maybe 60% out like multinationals. But we have worked with some of those multinationals who are subsidiaries in Africa, and they already have products there. But we've equally worked with people who are looking to enter Africa, and we work with clients as well who are expanding to different parts, who are based in Nigeria, for example, but looking to explore the Kenyan market or the Ghanaian market. So it varies, but mostly multinationals, mostly outside, looking in.
Yeah. I was
Ian,
just,
do you have a different clientele?
Very similar. My very similar ratios in terms of it's outside of Africa, looking into Africa. But then I've also in the happy position of having a number of African companies that come to me because they've tried local solutions and they found it wanting in terms of their research investment's been wasted and they haven't got anything that's helped them shift the dial on what their objectives are. So they come to me to come and do it properly in Africa. So, it all depends, but the vast majority, I think all of us concur, the three of us concur that it's companies outside looking in.
yeah. I was just interested about how much research African companies do and if your approaches would be the same for them or you need to
That's a good question.
I would say budgets are smaller with African companies. African companies are not necessarily as adventurous with the types of research that they will take on. But here and there we try and educate and push the dial a little bit. We were commissioned by it was a multinational. We were commissioned by their South Africa office to go to the Caribbean recently. So we've got to go to 4 islands in the Caribbean for a project for them.
Horrible
which
project.
is
Horrible
I know it's
project.
awful. We do say we do Africa 24/7, which is true, but we'll make an exception for that one.
Yeah, and for the African businesses, like he's saying, it's about mindset also, and an approach to doing things. I mean, we have had to even propose to some very top brands in the country that, okay, are you not interested in, because sometimes somebody outside, maybe it's a food brand, and then they want to find out what is the trend, and the food brand in country isn't doing anything, and it's not because they haven't contacted us, but it's just a general apathy and gathering knowledge, growing the brands. Some of them also do it probably internally, because they're trying to save cost and budget. But generally, research for businesses, African-based businesses, is not a thing. They are now growing into it. Most of even research projects are probably commissioned by the government, social projects and all that. But commercial enterprises who are looking at what trends are available on the market, the different market insights, their products are doing well, not doing well, what are people preferring, tasting. I mean, it's so foreign to most of them. It's so foreign to most of them. And those who actually engage us are often multinationals, you see, so they still have some tracking internationally. So these are some of the things. My business, for example, as we grow, it's one of the things we want to do, sensitization on the need for research.
Andrew, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I will say that, for the researchers, people have their own research businesses here as well. And also for clients, often sometimes our clients don't necessarily have people who've got experience in Africa in their companies. So they don't realize that there's a massive opportunity in some markets. Like we have, I've come across some clients who have Nigeria or Ghana as an export market. So they just export into that market, but they've never been there and they don't understand what other options and how much better that product could be performing and what other targets there could be for those products. And equally at some companies, like we had a big sportswear company contact us and they're everywhere, they're doing really well, but none of them had actually, and they've got lots of cities around the world that they get inspiration from, none of them have any eyes on what's going on in in Africa. So hopefully that's going to change going forward. But yeah,
Lots of opportunities then, by the sounds of things, for growing business
Yes, lots.
for African research. Okay, any more questions out there?
Thanks a lot.
Anybody else got a burning question for our panel? No?
They're all focused on lunch.
They're all focused on lunch, absolutely.
It's a shame because my little surprise is it's 5 minutes out. It's just sending.
Right.
But I'm not sure if people will stay on. It's
Well,
literally sending now.
We've still got a few more minutes to go, so so yes, no more questions. Anybody? Jeff, surely you've got a question. No.
Some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I was wondering if Andrew was answering the questions in the chat box, or if he could say which one he's trying to answer with his quick response approach.
So what's
Yeah.
investing in Africa?
Yeah, so if you give me a second, the reason we did put that question out there at the start was to send it out to a network so we can get a response back. So the response is just here. So if you give me a moment, I will get it open and then play you. I don't actually know which question was responded to, but someone on my team has, right, let me see if this is the one.
This is good research. A reverse. Here's the answer. Now, what was the question? Yeah.
Yeah. you have to guess. You have to guess what the question is. And obviously, we haven't had very much time to do this. But can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, we can see the
Yeah.
screen.
Okay. Let me stop. I need to optimize for sound, right? So hold on. Optimize for video.
You need a drum roll.
Yeah, let me just see if it works first though. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me know if you can hear the sound or not.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. Let me play this. So I don't know what the question is, but it will pop up. Here we go.
So what things am I positive about?
Unity and support.
Having good communication and living with unity.
I'm hopeful for growth financially.
Positive about financial growth for myself and my family, because I believe Nigeria is at a point in history where it has favored entrepreneurship more than ever.
To see how advanced our society is going to be, what opportunities are going to be there, and how creative we can get.
I'm positive that in the future that Africa as a whole will become the central stage of the world.
I believe with education we can overcome the challenges that are currently facing us, and also use it to seize opportunities that may come across us.
Réussir à assurer la tranquillité à ta famille.
Ce qui me semble positif pour l'avenir de ma famille et moi, c'est de voir le progrès que nous faisons chaque jour et les moments de bonheur que nous partageons ensemble, pouvoir réaliser nos projets et nos rêves.
Obviously, that was just a really quick response, which came from people who was available, basically. But it's just to give you a sense that, you know, you can get rapid responses, you can get really interesting feedback from people across the continent, which is, yeah, something that I think is really valuable to consider.
Wow, is what I would say. That was absolutely amazing. And there were even subtitles in English for the French language speakers. So I'm very impressed with that. Matt, you've got your hand up. Is there something you want to ask or say?
It was supposed to be just a little clap, that's all.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
that was great.
Fantastic. All
Okay.
right. Well, unless anybody has a last minute burning question, I think it's time to wind up this webinar. Thank you very much indeed to all three of you. They were super insightful presentations and a very interesting discussion. So, and that blew me away, that video at the end. So well done. Well done, Mojo. Right, well, thank you everybody. Thanks for the panel. Thanks to everybody for logging in. I hope you found it interesting. Do join us at one of our future webinars, and have a wonderful afternoon. Bye all.
Bye all.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.